A history of money from barter to Bitcoin. Money is one of humanity's most fundamental and transformative inventions. It is not merely currency or coins, but a system of value that has evolved to facilitate trade, store wealth, and measure economic activity. Its history is a mirror reflecting our own social, technological, and political development. The age of barter and the problem of coincidence of wants. Before money, there was barter, the direct exchange of one good for another. A farmer with excess grain would trade with a potter for a new vessel. While simple in theory, barter was wildly inefficient. It required a coincidence of wants. The potter had to want grain at the exact moment the farmer wanted a pot. There was no common measure of value, making complex trades and deferred payments nearly impossible. The first money, commodities and shells. To solve the limitations of barter, societies began to use certain commodities as a medium of exchange. These early forms of money had value in themselves, intrinsic value, and were widely desired. Agricultural society staples, grain, cattle, and salt, the origin of the word salary, were used. Commodity money, tools like spades and hoes in China, or bars of metals. Cowrie shells, used as currency in Africa, Asia, and parts of the Americas. Cowrie shells were one of the longest used and most widespread forms of primitive money due to their durability, uniformity, and difficulty to counterfeit. The Great Leap, coinage and standardized value. Around the 7th century BCE, a revolutionary innovation occurred in Lydia, modern-day Turkey, the minted coin. The Lydians created coins from electrum, a natural alloy of gold and silver, and stamped them with official marks to guarantee their weight and purity. This was a monumental shift. Standardization, coins created a uniform unit of account. State authority, the stamp certified value, moving trust from the material itself to the authority that minted it. Portability and durability, coins were far easier to use in daily trade than bags of grain or cattle. The concept spread rapidly to Greece, Persia, and throughout the Mediterranean, becoming the bedrock of classical economies and enabling long-distance trade and taxation on a new scale. Paper and promises, the birth of representative money. While coins were a step forward, large quantities were heavy and vulnerable to theft. In medieval China and later in Europe, goldsmiths and merchants began to solve this problem. They issued paper receipts as promises to pay a certain amount of gold or silver to the bearer on demand. These receipts were the first modern banknotes. They were representative money. The paper itself was worthless, but it represented a claim on something of real value stored in a vault. This laid the foundation for the banking system. The age of fiat, money by decree. The next great shift was the move to fiat money. Fiat is Latin for let it be done. Fiat currency has no intrinsic value. It is not backed by a physical commodity like gold. Its value derives solely from government decree and, most critically, collective trust in the issuing authority. This system became dominant in the 20th century. During World War I, many countries suspended the gold standard to print money for the war effort. In 1971, President Richard Nixon formally ended the convertibility of the US dollar into gold, finalizing the global shift to a fiat system. The advantages were significant. Governments and central banks could now control the money supply, manage inflation, and respond to economic crises. The risk, however, was that without the discipline of a gold standard, governments could print excessive amounts of money, leading to hyperinflation, as seen in Weimar Germany or more recently in Zimbabwe and Venezuela. The digital revolution, plastic and bits. The late 20th century saw money become increasingly intangible. Credit and debit cards 1950s plus, these shifted value from physical cash to electronic entries in bank ledgers, making transactions faster and more convenient. Online banking 1990s plus, money became data, transferred across digital networks instantly. The present and future, cryptocurrencies and beyond. The 2008 financial crisis eroded trust in central banks and the traditional financial system. In its wake, an anonymous entity known as Satoshi Nakamoto published a paper on Bitcoin, a peer-to-peer electronic cash system. Cryptocurrencies represent a potential new chapter. Decentralization, they operate on a distributed public ledger called a blockchain, removing the need for a central authority like a bank or government. Digital scarcity. Unlike fiat money, cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin have a capped supply, making them resistant to inflation by decree. Programmability. New forms of digital money, including central bank digital currencies, CBDCs, are being explored, which could make money smarter and more integrated with technology. Conclusion. The essence of money. The history of money is a story of evolving trust. It began with trust in the intrinsic value of a commodity, a cowrie shell, a gold coin. It moved to trust in an issuing authority's promise to redeem paper for gold. Today, it rests on trust in a government's management of fiat currency, and increasingly in the cryptographic algorithms that secure digital ledgers. From barley to bitcoins, the form of money has constantly changed, but its core functions have not. It remains our primary medium of exchange, unit of account, and store of value, a technology of trust that continues to shape human civilization.